Here's something wild. There are people in Ontario right now paying more for their mortgage than what their parents earned in an entire year. Let that sink in for a second. We're not talking about mansions with helicopter pads. We're talking about cookie-cutter townhouses in suburbs where the biggest attraction is a strip mall with a sketchy pizza place. Buckle up. We're about to talk about something that might sound absolutely bonkers. Yep, I'm saying it. The housing market across the province of Ontario is gearing up for a plunge so dramatic, even the playoff hopes of the Toronto Maple Leafs would look like major wins in comparison. You heard me right. The region where a parking stall can cost more than a mayor's yearly salary is finally showing signs of genuine wobble, literally and figuratively. If you're outside Canada and scratching your head over Ontario who? I'll assume you're waving the USA flag. And for those in the States who do know Ontario, let's ride this train together. So here's how we've been thinking. Canadian real estate only ever goes up. We've been convincing ourselves for too long, and we've believed it. But after years of home prices zooming like squirrels on espresso, foreign buyers treating neighborhoods like monopoly properties, and speculation crazier than your crypto-obsessed friend, reality is sneaking up like January after a Hawaiian vacation. Even if you're in the USA, what happens in Canada affects you. Policies, mortgage floods, investor money, everything's tied together. Stick around because you're about to learn things that many Americans won't see coming, from how Canada's mortgage market ripples south to soft lessons on what to do and what to avoid when home prices go bonkers. Let's explore the 10 markets where reality is knocking loudly. 10. Milton. Suburbia on steroids without the infrastructure. Let's talk about Milton. This is Suburbia Central, where development outpaced literally everything else that makes a community actually functional. Roads? Schools? Community centers? Minor details, apparently. Someone just kept building houses and forgot that people need, ways to get places and services to use. The average price sits around $1.2 million, and the traffic? 2-hour commutes each way aren't uncommon. Got that? 4 hours of your day sitting in your car, contemplating your life choices while Highway 401 turns into the world's longest parking lot. Families moved here believing the whole close to Toronto sales pitch, only to discover that being geographically close doesn't help when you're stuck in traffic for half your waking existence. The real kicker is what's happening to those folks who locked in mortgages at 1.5% during the pandemic buying frenzy. They're now staring down the barrel of 7% renewals, watching their monthly payments jump by thousands of dollars. That's not a minor adjustment. That's a fundamental restructuring of your entire financial life. Still, the community spirit here runs deep. People genuinely look out for each other. Once prices drop around 40%, Milton could finally deliver on what it originally promised: affordable family suburbia where you don't need to be a tech executive to afford the entry fee. 9. Oshawa. The university town that forgot students can't afford anything either. Durham region ambitious underdog picked up a university campus and apparently assumed it would magically transform into the next big thing. That's nice in theory, but the investors who piled in thinking student rentals would cover $3,000 monthly mortgages? Yeah, they're learning some expensive lessons right now. The average home price hovers around $858,000 in a city where the median income barely cracks $76,000. Inventory has jumped 62% as those same investors realize that students, shockingly, don't have unlimited money for rent. Who could have predicted that besides literally everyone? But look past the investor carnage, and there's genuine hope here. Oshawa has legitimate lakeside access, real green spaces that aren't just sad patches of grass, and a gritty authenticity that's become increasingly rare. When things reset, and we're thinking somewhere between 35 to 45% drops, regular folks who actually want to build lives there might finally get their chance. It won't be the glossy investor paradise anyone imagined, but it might actually become a real community again. 8. Brampton, where the math stopped making sense years ago. Welcome to Brampton, where trying to explain housing prices to anyone with basic arithmetic skills feels like explaining why water flows uphill. We're talking about a city where the average detached home topped $1.3 million, while the median household was pulling in something around $87,000 annually. Go ahead, grab a calculator and try to make that equation work without developing an eye twitch. The real story here isn't just in those numbers, it's in the panic selling that's flooding the market right now. Inventory has surged nearly half compared to last year, and sellers are hitting the market like they've suddenly remembered they left the oven on. With interest rates hovering around that brutal 7% mark, mortgages are devouring savings accounts faster than teenagers clear out a fridge after school. The investor crowd that used to circle Brampton like sharks? They're leaving town faster than most. Rental yields have collapsed so hard you can hear the echo. But here's the thing that actually matters beneath all this chaos. The place is built from the ground up, creating real neighborhoods with actual character and connection. Once prices drop, and we're talking somewhere in the range of 30 to 40%, this might actually become affordable for regular families again. You know, the ones who actually want to live there instead of treating it like a stock ticker. 7. Hamilton, when Brooklyn North priced out everyone who made it cool. The Hammer used to be Ontario's best-kept secret, the gruff working-class city with killer food and actual character. Then Toronto noticed it. Then it exploded. Then locals got priced out. It's the full gentrification cycle on fast forward. Houses now fetch around $847,000, properties that sold for $200,000 back in 2015. That's not market growth. That's absurdity with a mountain view attached. The math doesn't just fail to work, it's actively insulting. Landlords here are discovering what you probably already know. Being a landlord isn't the passive income dream Instagram made it look like. It's late-night maintenance calls, problem tenants, and watching your investment become a second job you're not qualified for. But Hamilton has backbone. There are steelworkers here whose families go back generations, old-school Italian neighborhoods where Sunday dinner isn't optional, and artists who've been grinding in this city since before it was discovered by people with too much Toronto money. When the crash hits, and we're looking at 40 to 50% drops potentially, Hamilton might finally be affordable for locals again, instead of serving as Toronto's overpriced overflow parking lot. 6. Cambridge, where tech money bought backyards and then disappeared. Cambridge, here's the plot twist nobody saw coming. The tech jobs are now zipping out of home offices or vanishing entirely in layoff waves. Turns out the whole work-from-anywhere revolution made that expensive Cambridge house less necessary than everyone thought. Average price sits around $823,000, inventory has exploded 71%, and prices are already down roughly 12%. That's not speculation about the future. That's happening right now. The community here built serious neighborhoods over decades, not cookie-cutter subdivisions where every house looks like it was 3D printed from the same file. They're watching the investor money evaporate like morning fog while wondering if their own kids will ever afford to live nearby. Once prices fall to around the $500,000 level, which actually seems almost quaint at this point, this place might make sense again. Not as a tech worker's escape hatch, but as an actual community where regular people with regular jobs can afford to put down roots. 5. Barrie, the lakeside dream that turned into a commuter's nightmare. Ah, Barrie. Picture a beautiful lakeside city that should have been Ontario's hidden gem. Then picture developers and speculators descending on it like locusts with mortgages. the population exploded by 300% over 2 decades, while home prices shot up 400% in just 5 years. Meanwhile, job growth? Yeah, that barely registered a pulse. Right now, the average home will set you back close to $900,000 in a city where the median income hovers around $78,000. Most residents don't even work in Barrie. They're commuting to Toronto, which means when Toronto catches a cold, Barrie ends up in the ICU. Yet beneath all the chaos, there's an authentic spirit struggling to persist. Central Barrie features specialty beer units, markets where vendors and customers share real connections, and residential areas gradually transforming from mere suburban dormitories for weary travelers into something more substantial. When prices eventually drop, maybe 35% or so, ordinary humans might finally be able to afford hanging out there. Imagine that, living in a lakeside city without needing to sell a kidney first. 4. Vaughan, the suburb that forgot people actually lived there. Vaughan forgot to stay small, then forgot that suburbs are supposed to be where people actually live their lives. What you get is massive homes in identical subdivisions surrounded by chain restaurants for miles, where the biggest local landmark is which Starbucks you prefer. The average detached home price hovers around $1.6 million, while household debt sits at 385% of income. That's not just unsustainable, that's where everyone's hoping they're not the piece that causes everything to topple. You've got lots of new high-rises going up, half of them sitting empty, with developers apparently betting that people will pay $800,000 and up for boxes with views of other boxes. Surprise? They won't. But buried underneath all this glossy suburban sprawl, there's a real community trying to survive. There are eateries where the owner's grandmother knows your name and remembers your kids' birthdays, genuine pockets of connection that existed before the development boom turned everything into a real estate prospectus. When prices drop around 45%, there might actually be potential here for something resembling normal life again. 3. Mississauga, Toronto's overflow closet that lost its identity. Mississauga is Toronto's overflow closet, the place that got built up frantically, but somehow forgot to develop its own identity in the process. The average home price sits around $1.1 million for the privilege of living in a city where downtown is literally just a mall. Your condo tower probably has an inspiring name like Building D, because apparently we've run out of creative ways to label where humans live. Condo inventory is up 94%. That's not a bubble forming. That's a liquidation sale where everyone's heading for the exits at once. You've got all these identical towers where the main distinguishing feature is which letter or number got slapped on the building. When house prices fall somewhere between 35 and 40%, and condos drop 45 to 55%, Mississauga might finally get a chance to ask itself, who am I? Instead of just existing as Toronto's extra parking lot, it might develop into something with actual character and identity, beyond being close to somewhere more interesting. 2. Toronto, ground zero for the reality check. Here's the big one. Toronto, where the average house will set you back $1.3 million and condos run around $780,000. Sanity? Missing in action, presumed dead. This city sold mortgages like they were bragging rights at dinner parties. Being house poor wasn't seen as a problem. It was practically a status symbol, proof you'd made it into the club even if you were eating ramen to afford the membership fee. Everyone convinced themselves it was normal to spend 70% of income on housing, because that's just what you do to live in a world-class city. Now you've got tech layoffs rolling through, financial sector turbulence that nobody wants to talk about openly, and luxury condos sitting empty like expensive monuments to speculation. When the correction comes, and conservatively, we're looking at 40 to 60% drops, Toronto might remember it's supposed to be a place for people to actually live, not just wallets on legs. 1. Oakville, where Teslas are economy cars and reality is optional. Finally, we have Oakville, luxury central, where Teslas qualify as economy vehicles and people discuss their cottage that's worth more than most people's primary residences. The average house price sits around $1.8 million, basically ransom note territory for anyone without generational wealth or a tech exit. You've got boomers sitting on homes worth millions, watching their own kids unable to afford living anywhere near them. It's this weird situation where parents are technically wealthy on paper, but their children are effectively priced out of their own hometown. New listings are up 83%, which is everyone simultaneously realizing they might want to cash out before the music stops. But Old Oakville, the parts that existed before it became a symbol of unattainable wealth, has gorgeous streets and homes with actual character and legitimate lake access that isn't just a marketing bullet point. If values reset 40% or more, maybe normal people, teachers, nurses, small business owners, could actually live there again instead of just storing wealth in expensive boxes. What Canadians are really thinking, and it's not pretty. The universal rage. Everyone agrees something's broken. Ontarians aren't just worried, they're angry, exhausted, and deeply divided over what's coming next. But no matter their political leanings, background, or whether they own property or rent, most people agree on one fundamental thing. Ontario's housing market has gone completely off the rails. They describe it as absurd, unsustainable, and soul-crushing. And those are the polite descriptions. People openly joke that even winning the lottery wouldn't make homeownership feasible anymore. The dark humor has gotten darker. You either inherit a house or live in your car. There's no middle ground left. When an entire generation communicates through gallows humor about basic shelter, something has fundamentally broken in the social contract. The wage stagnation reality nobody can ignore. Beyond the sticker prices on homes, the biggest grievance you'll hear is about wage stagnation. It's not just that houses are expensive, it's that salaries have barely budged while property values went absolutely parabolic. People aren't mincing words. A house went up 400%, my paycheck didn't. That's not abstract economics. That's lived reality for millions of people watching the gap between effort and reward grow impossibly wide. Even people with what used to be considered decent incomes, teachers, nurses, mid-level professionals, feel squeezed to the breaking point. Renters talk about rents doubling within a few years, and renovictions, where landlords find creative ways to kick out long-term tenants to jack up prices. The Great Divide: crash or soft landing? Here's where things get really heated. Roughly 2/3 of people believe a major correction is inevitable, with many predicting 40 to 60% price drops. They point to rising interest rates finally biting, over-leveraged investors desperately trying to unload properties, and shrinking demand as warning signs that can't be ignored. To this crowd, a crash isn't just likely. It's long overdue justice, a necessary correction to years of speculation and greed. But there's another side that thinks differently. They argue that as long as immigration remains high and housing supply stays low, prices might dip, not dive. Some even suggest the government and banks will step in before any full-scale collapse happens because too much of Canada's economy is tied to real estate to let it truly fail. They might be right, or they might be engaging in the same wishful thinking that got us here. The blame game. Everyone's the villain. When it comes to pointing fingers, absolutely no one escapes blame. Politicians, corporations, landlords, foreign investors, domestic speculators, banks, and even nebulous global financial systems all take turns as the villain depending on who's talking. Many people lash out at the former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, blaming immigration policies and weak governance for letting things spiral out of control. Others slam Doug Ford for cozying up to developers and refusing to implement meaningful reforms. Then there's a contingent that widens the lens completely, targeting global elites, the World Economic Forum, or central banks manipulating the system in ways that start to sound almost conspiratorial but reflect genuine distrust in institutions. Yet there's also a pragmatic camp that focuses on domestic factors everyone can actually see. Weak zoning reform that blocks new construction, speculative investors treating homes like stock portfolios, and a banking system that recklessly handed out mortgages to anyone with a pulse during the low-rate years. They say it's not foreigners or global conspiracies. It's Canadians buying 5 properties and calling it a retirement plan while complaining about affordability. Hard to argue with that observation. Immigration, the third rail nobody can discuss calmly. Nothing, and I mean nothing, sparks more heated debate than immigration's role in the housing crisis. It's become the third rail of Canadian discourse, where any conversation immediately becomes radioactive. Some argue that record population growth has driven housing demand far beyond what supply can possibly match. They point to the math. Adding hundreds of thousands of people annually to cities without building equivalent housing obviously creates price pressure. Some claim the government's open-door policy is directly fueling both inflation and homelessness, and their frustration is palpable. The other side fires back hard, calling that narrative lazy scapegoating that ignores deeper systemic issues. They argue that blaming newcomers conveniently overlooks investor greed, lack of rent control, failure to build social housing, and decades of poor planning. The clash exposes how housing frustration easily morphs into political and cultural resentment. What starts as economic anxiety ends up touching every raw nerve in Canadian society: identity, fairness, who belongs, and who gets to decide. Ontario's decline, once beautiful, now broken. Longtime residents paint an increasingly bleak picture of their communities. Barrie gets described as rundown and not cool anymore, a shadow of its former lakeside charm. Oshawa gets compared to a zombie apocalypse, harsh, but you hear it repeatedly. Hamilton gets remembered as rough in the 70s, with people noting, and it's still rough, as if nothing's improved despite quadrupled prices. Toronto gets slammed as overpriced, overcrowded, and fundamentally overrated, a city that believes its own hype while ordinary people can barely survive there. Even smaller communities like Woodstock and Whitby get described as unrecognizable, crowded and polluted, and stripped of whatever character made them special in the first place. For many lifelong residents, Ontario no longer feels like home. It feels like a place that was sold out from under them while they were just trying to live their lives. That sense of loss goes beyond economics into something more profound. The feeling that the place you grew up in doesn't want you anymore, unless you're wealthy. So what this all actually means for real life? Ontario's housing market has transcended being about shelter or real estate. It's become a symbol of everything people feel is broken: fairness, opportunity, generational equity, trust in leadership, and hope for any kind of decent future. The crisis has metastasized from economics into something closer to a crisis of meaning. Many Canadians now see a housing crash not as a catastrophe to be avoided, but as a necessary correction, a cleansing of greed and imbalance, a reckoning that's overdue. There's almost an apocalyptic hope in how people talk about it. Yes, it will hurt, but maybe something better can grow in its place. Maybe prices that actually connect to what people earn. Maybe communities where your kids can afford to live near you. Maybe a system that rewards work instead of speculation. Whether that crash actually arrives or not, whether prices plummet 40% or just stagnate for years or somehow find a soft landing, almost doesn't matter to how people feel right now. The social contract around home ownership in Ontario has already collapsed. The dream of stability, of building equity, of passing something on to your kids. That's already gone for most people under 40. The question isn't whether we're in a crisis. The question is whether anything that emerges from this crisis will be better or just differently broken. So what do you think? Are you stocking up on popcorn for the show, or are you one of the people living through this crisis every day, watching your dreams get priced further out of reach? Drop a comment below, and don't forget to share and subscribe if you find it interesting.